This is music, and this broadcast is brought to you by our sponsor, the mighty metal Marty Mac. Welcome to another First Impressions video. Not too long ago, the mighty metal Marty Mac very kindly sent me 4 CDs in a VCLT. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Metal Marty Mac has an awesome VC channel. That's a vinyl community channel here on YouTube. He focuses on heavy metal music, and he shows lots of awesome vinyl, cassette tapes, CDs, and it's just an all-round awesome dude as well. So go and check out his channel. Now, he very kindly sent me 4 CDs, and in this video I will share with you my first impressions of those CDs. Now, there's a kind of a theme, and that theme is progressive music. But first, we have kind of the odd man out here. That's Killchain, Rottenness, and this is just all out death metal. It's very, very riffy. The very first guitar riff that you hear on this album just sets the record straight that, you know, this is gonna be a riff fest, and it is. Now, their name, Killchain, might suggest that they are fans of Bolt Thrower, and there is perhaps a tiny bit of a Bolt Thrower influence on this album, but it's really just straight up old school death metal with a modern kind of sound. So the guitar tone, the production sounds very modern, but the music itself, the riffs, the compositions and all that stuff sounds very old school. And it's great. If you really like just your riffy death metal, do check out Killchain. Very enjoyable. Up next, some more death metal, A Valediction by Obscura. And this is where the progressive theme kicks in. Obscura, they are a German technical progressive death metal band, and I actually really like their first 3 or 4 albums. And then for some reason, some unexplained reason, I don't even know why, I kind of dropped off. Not that I stopped liking them or anything. But I just stopped following them for some reason. I guess you can't follow all, artists all the time, and, life happens and all that stuff. That's probably why. So I was really happy that he sent me this so I could get back into them. Now, their style on the first album is more just technical death metal, and then on the next 2 or 3 albums, they become more technical and more progressive too. And I really like the Anti-Cosmic Overload. That was the first song I heard by them, which is just a crazy musical journey. And so progressive technical death metal. And on this album here, I don't know which album this is in their discography. I don't know how many they released before this, because, as I said, I kind of dropped off for some reason. But they carry on the technical style, the progressive style in this album, and it's still, just a musical journey, and it's still a challenging listen. But it seems to me that they have incorporated a bit more melodeath into their style since I last checked them out, and it works very well here. So you have a bunch of riffs that are more in the sort of typical melodic death metal style of riffing, intertwined with the more technical and more brutal and blast beady death metal stuff that they have apparently been doing all the time. I really like that introduction of melodic death metal into their style. Some of the songs also have a quite pervasive influence from Cynic, which I didn't detect on the early albums either. So part of this might be that the bass is very audible in this album, and it has a very warm and round sound, which I really appreciate. It's a fretless bass. The bassist is, I think he's a flamenco jazz bassist who got kind of interested in playing death metal. So you have that sort of mix, and that's really interesting too. So I was happy to hear this. Great stuff. Nice to hear that they have evolved their sound a bit, but that they also stick to the things that kind of constitute the core sound of Obscura. Great album. If you like progressive, technical, challenging death metal, check out Obscura's A Valediction. Up next, we have Falls Apart by Sectile. And it came with a cool sticker right there. So this is, as far as I remember, it's an Irish band. And this is progressive metal. And it's awesome. It's great. What I like about it is that it is clearly progressive metal. They have, complex song structures. You have odd time signatures. You have unusual chords. But it's not your like overly technical, super complex, show-offy progressive metal. They're more in the vein, I would say, of the Fate's Warning, like more recent Fate's Warning. It's in that, more subdued, less show-offy, but still very progressive direction. And it's great stuff. The album is just a musical journey, and it seems to me that they have some inspiration from the alternative rock and alternative metal scene as well. There's some tiny elements of some sludgy stuff too. So you can hear, I can hear, I guess, influences from, more recent Fate's Warning, a bit of maybe even Alice in Chains, a bit of Soundgarden, a bit of Mastodon, but it is the course, and also actually a lot of just progressive rock. But at its core, it's progressive metal. It's a musical journey. It's an interesting listen. I really enjoy it. If you are into progressive metal just in general, I certainly suggest you check this one out. It's a bit darker than your, for example, your Dream Theater or your Queensryche. So if you want to go with the big four of progressive metal from back in the day, they have more in common with Psychotic Waltz and then more recent Fate's Warning. It's a bit darker, but it's great stuff. I really, really enjoy listening to Sectile. And up last, from the Lost Not Forgotten archives, we have Train of Thought, the instrumental demos. And don't worry, I still have the digipack. I have it stored somewhere safely. So this CD here contains the demos for Train of Thought by Dream Theater. And like I just mentioned, Dream Theater are one of the big four of progressive metal from back in the 90s. A lot of people talk about the big three nowadays when they sort of think back and they go, yeah, Queensryche, Dream Theater, Fate's Warning. But back then, people actually talked about Psychotic Waltz just as much. And back then, where Psychotic Waltz kind of had their own thing going compared to the rest of these, was that Psychotic Waltz had a very dark sound, whereas Dream Theater, Fate's Warning back then, and Queensryche were more had a more accessible, less heavy sound. But on this one here, Dream Theater actually decided to go heavy. So Train of Thought is one of the heaviest, if not the heaviest, album in the Dream Theater discography. And so these are the instrumental demo recordings, kind of, I guess, as part of making that album. And I haven't listened to this album for a while. I mean, I'm a big Dream Theater fan, but I haven't listened to this album for a while. So it's just nice to get to hear those songs again. Because it is a great album. It's their heaviest, I think, or at least one of their heaviest albums. And it's also one of their least technical and least complex albums. And that doesn't mean that it's not complex or not technical, because it's Dream Theater, you know, it has to be like that. It's just less so than a lot of their other releases. But it's heavy, it's dark, and obviously this is interesting because this is basically gives you kind of a behind the scenes look at the making of this album. The guitar is really loud, the drums are really loud, and what I really appreciate is that the bass is quite loud here too. The keyboard are a bit more in the background, which is kind of weird when you know that the keyboard is actually quite prominent in Dream Theater. So that's interesting to hear that as part of making this album, at some point the keyboards were kept a bit in the background. And it's very interesting to hear these songs without the vocals, but it also has made me appreciate James LaBrie even more, and made me realize just how integral his voice is to the Dream Theater sound, because it is kind of strange to hear the songs without his vocals. It's interesting because there's some things that you get to kind of notice that you might not have noticed when you have the real version with the vocals, but the vocals and his voice, just such an integral sound or part of the Dream Theater sound. But yeah, if you are a Dream Theater fan and you're interested in sort of getting a behind the scenes look at these songs, what they sounded like before they were kind of made into the final product, check this one out. For me, I really enjoyed listening to it. I'm a big Dream Theater fan, and I actually really like A Train of Thought, and I really like actually their sort of heavier and darker albums. I kind of dropped off when Mike Portnoy left for some reason, because Mike Mangini is a fantastic drummer too. I've seen them live with both drummers, not at the same time, but I've seen them live a couple of times with Portnoy and live a couple of times with Mangini. I think maybe Mike Portnoy had more of a stage presence, which is unusual for a drummer, but for some reason I kind of dropped off, which makes no sense because their stuff is still good. So I think this album, or this has probably inspired me to maybe explore the post Mangini era or the Mangini era a bit more. I do have some of their albums from the Mangini era. I just never really listened that much to him, so maybe this one has sparked this off. But yeah, it's great. If you like Dream Theater, if you like prog metal, check either the actual album out, or maybe check the actual album out first and then listen to this collection of demos. So there you go. The theme: progressive metal, going from progressive death metal to old school progressive metal. So again, thanks to Metal Marty Mac for sending me those CDs. I really enjoyed listening to them, and I really appreciate you sending those CDs to me. Go and check out his channel. Thanks for watching.